I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show. Today on the James Altucher Show.
Maybe you've seen the hit TV show The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, or maybe you haven't. Either way, such a pleasure to have on Jen Shahade, chess master. She was twice the U.S. Women's Champion. She was a chess master at the age of 15. She was a prodigy. She wrote books on chess. She's also a professional poker player and a commentator for both chess and poker. Pleasure to have her on the podcast to talk about The Queen's Gambit, chess, writing, poker, and all sorts of fun things. So, Jen, I wanted to introduce you to the audience. You're a chess master. I just realized you were a chess master at the age of 15.
I know. It's kind of surprising because I was overrated when I became a chess master.
I'm sure you weren't overrated, but go ahead.
Well, I won it when I was 15. I played in something called the Insanity Tournament, which was a tournament where you had to play chess all night. And I was like 15, and I was playing against all these mostly older people who this was more of a difficult for them. I'm a teenager, 3 a.m. is my time.
Right.
So I won all my games, and I went from 21-30 to 22-02. And I as soon as I had to play in a regular tournament in the normal hours of the day, I dropped out.
But still, you were probably one of the, how old was Bobby Fischer when he became a chess master? He was 15, right?
He was a grandmaster at 15, but I was still one of the younger masters because at that time there weren't as many really, really young masters. It was still somewhat cool to have your master rating at 15.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, and then you were a U.S. Women's Champion in 2002 and 2004. So you were 22 years old when you became the U.S. Women's Champion.
Yeah, 21 actually.
21. So was that, who was playing in that? Was Irina Krush playing in that?
She was playing when I won the second one. When I won the first one, I can't remember why she didn't play because it was a nice prize fund. She must have had some kind of conflict. But actually, it was the first year that men and women played in the same section. So I was playing against grandmasters for most of the event.
Oh, I see. So whoever the top-ranked woman was that year became the U.S. Women's Champion?
Exactly.
Was that a highlight of your life, winning that championship at the age of 21?
Yes, definitely. It was definitely a highlight. Yeah, because I don't think I was is so much expecting it. I was never, all the big achievements I've had in my life, chess wise, I was never the highest ranked player. I was always like, 3 or 4 on the list. And then like I had to play really well in order to become the champion. So I think that makes it sweeter. Like when you're the favorite and you win, like, you kind of go in a little bit expecting you might. For me, I always had to really like, dig deep.
And your brother obviously is Greg Shahade is an international master. Your dad, Michael Shahade, is a FIDE master. Obviously, that's what got you into it. But was Greg kind of kicking you around, and you finally said, "I'm going to learn how to play chess and beat this guy," or what happened? How'd you get involved?
Not exactly like that. So what happened with my brother was that he's always been a great brother, but he and I have very different minds, even though like you wouldn't think that because we both are interested in a lot of the same things. I'm very creative and Greg has creative streak too, but I think he's a lot faster, like the way he thinks. He's very, very quick. I am slower and I often get to good places, but it takes me longer. So when we both started learning chess, he was just skyrocketed ahead of me. He's 2 years older. He became a master at 14. And when he was a master, I was like 1,400. Like I was really low rated for, compared to 2,200. For those of you who don't know, the scale goes from kind of like about 600 to 2,800 for like the best player in the world. So 2,200 is really good.
Yeah, like the average player on the street, like who knows the rules and can play games with their family, what rating would you say they are?
Probably like around 500 to 800, right?
5 to 800. And it's about 150 points as a standard deviation. So if you're 1,000 and someone's 1,150, the 1,150 could beat the 1,000 2 out of 3 times roughly.
Yeah, although I think it's a little less reliable, lower ratings because your learning curve is so steep that if you spend like one night studying puzzles, like that could have flip-flopped, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, as you get stronger, the rating is much more reliable. So because I was like a lot slower, I was like, maybe chess isn't my thing. And so I kind of abandoned it for a couple of years.
So a couple of years, you were 12.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
11, yeah. 11, 12, 13, something like that. Yeah.
So then 13, 14, you get back into it. And a year later, you're 2,200. So obviously there's some talent there, but you must have learned a lot. Did you learn a lot from Greg and your father?
Oh yeah, definitely. A lot. And just like the approach, my dad always taught me, you just have to study this tactics book and then study it again. Cause that was a little bit of a problem for me. I wasn't the quickest, but you can train your brain to be really quick when it comes to the patterns that matter in chess, right? I think the thing is nobody's born a good chess player. And so it's all about training yourself to be a better version of yourself. And for some people, that means different things. For some people, their brain works too fast and they need to slow down. Some people are overconfident and they need to, again, slow down and make sure that they're deliberating. And some people are underconfident, they're too slow. But wherever you are, it's all about like trying to perfect it and become a better chess player, which isn't natural.
It's interesting. Like when I first started playing, I got really obsessed with openings. But now, many, many years later, if all you did was study tactics, I think that's good enough to beat everybody unless you're playing like, grandmasters and stuff.
Agreed. Tactics and puzzles. And it's so fun. And there's such a high learning curve, which I think is just like exciting. It's like lifting weights at the gym. You see all these other people like running on the treadmill, getting nowhere. And you're like sitting there like lifting and you're like really getting stronger. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that hasn't happened to me, but
I'm not a cardio hater. I just, it felt like a good analogy at the time.
I don't like anything that happens in the gym. It's all bad. So I just stick to sitting behind my computer. I don't even like playing chess on with real people anymore. I just like sitting on playing online. Like, do you ever play in like real? Well, now with COVID, maybe not.
Yeah.
But when was the last time you played like face to face with somebody other than your family members?
Yeah, and ages ago. I mean, at the St. Louis Chess Club, I'll play some pickup games with people sometimes when I'm waiting for something to happen. But yeah, I think it'd be more likely that I would use chess pieces and a real board to like look at tactics or problems because that's really fun. That is a beautiful exercise.
Yeah, I should study more with a real board. Like I tend to not study games anymore, which is probably not so good. Like I tend to just do too much tactics. And I know Ben Johnson on his chess podcast, he just had a guy who said, no more, you shouldn't do bullet chess. I probably do too much bullet.
Oh, definitely, probably. I mean, I think it depends on the person though. Maybe for you, because it seems like you think and speak really quickly. Maybe bullet is like a nice match and it feels good. But I think for a lot of people, it's like they're trying to think more quickly about chess and is natural for them. And it just leaves you feeling like kind of scrambled afterwards, like not good.
I'm curious what you said earlier about how nobody's born a good chess player. Like if you interview some, like you ever watch, this might have been too long ago, but like Jorge Zamora, when he was 11 years old, that guy was like beating grandmasters and his blitz was just like when he would analyze a game, because I was roommates with Elias Zamora for a while, his older brother, and Jorge would analyze this game. It was like he was so far ahead of us. He must have been born with something. I always debate this talent versus skill thing.
Well, yeah, Jorge Zamora, or now Zamora Hasmoon, is like got to be one of the most talented players ever. I mean, I think a lot of people say that. Like, you're not the only one. He was considered a super talent because like the things he saw in Blitz were incredible. But even Jorge, like it requires like training to kind of bring out that talent. It's not like he just like looks at a chessboard and is like, oh yeah, I know what to do here. You do need to like kind of like connect.
Yeah, because ultimately I guess I don't want to say he fizzled out. I don't really know the story, but ultimately he didn't become like a top professional when he probably could have been.
Probably with that type of talent. I mean, but then there's all these mental game issues. And, about the bullet chess, I'm just curious, how do you feel after? Because I think that matters a lot. Like, do you feel scrambled and kind of like unpleasant, or do you feel good after you play like a series of bullet games?
No, I feel unpleasant because I feel like it's like eating junk food or watching like really bad TV. It's like I was just entertained, but I got no value out of it at all.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I play like, let's say even 3 or 5 minutes with an increment, there's an extra few seconds your brain can kick in and really dive into a position a little bit. Not so much like a tournament game, but enough that you're actually thinking about the position instead of just, blitzing out the fastest move.
Yeah, I have a theory about blitz and especially very quick games that it doesn't feel good if you're not improving. So if you're playing a series of bullet game and, that finishes in 2 minutes or 3 or 4 minutes, and you're actually looking at all the openings and you're studying puzzles in between and end games, and your rating's going up and you're feeling that you're getting better and you're beating better people, then that actually is a really good feeling. But if you're just kind of like exercising at the same level, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's just kind of like a way to pass time. I think that can be like less pleasurable.
Well, I think that's like learning in general. Like learning is pleasurable, or mastering anything is pleasurable. And just you probably know a lot of people who for 10 years, 20 years, they stay at the same level, even though they're playing all the time. They'd like to get better. They just don't study. They don't know how to learn. And I always get frustrated when I see people who obviously want to get better, but they don't take the basic steps to learn, like studying games or studying tactics or whatever. Although now I'm at a point where I just like to play for enjoyment. I probably should break out a chess book and study, get back to normal.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends. I feel like if people are enjoying chess for what it is and they don't really have any desire to get better, then that's okay. I think we should be accepting of that too. Because chess is like a language, Like there's a lot of people who just, want to play it. But I think for the most part, people do want to get better. That is probably the dominant type in chess for sure.
And so then during this whole time, you then wrote the book Chess Bitch, which was your autobiography / memoir about your experiences in chess. And then you wrote the excellent book. Well, both books were excellent, but then you wrote Play Like a Girl, which was you analyze a bunch of games by women, and you very graciously signed it and signed it for my daughters and sent it to me, which I appreciate. And then, of course, you became a professional poker player.
Yeah, I guess I like trying new things. I mean, I know you love doing a lot of new things. I like trying new things because I feel like you learn new things about yourself, and you also get to meet a lot of new people, particularly with poker. With writing, I just felt like besides chess, it was like the one time in my life that I felt this like glorious like flow experience where everything else in my life disappeared. Whereas with chess, in order to get that feeling, I needed to like go to a tournament. Whereas like with writing, I could like just sit down on my computer and get that feeling. That was really cool. And it's harder to get that feeling from chess when I'm sitting at my computer because the games are so quick, like you say. But with writing, I felt that, and I was like kind of intoxicated by that immediately. So when I wrote papers in college, I started to realize that about myself, and that made me really want to write a book about women in chess because there hadn't really been any. And so Chess Bitch it was.
Yeah, I don't know of any. I mean, there's books about like different chess players. I'm assuming there's a book about Vera Menchik somewhere. You know, the first. She's sort of the first woman's world champion, right?
And she won it so many times, and she was so dominant, so much better than every other female of the time, and it's just an incredible story, indeed, Vera Menchik.
And then there's the Polgar sisters, which is like the Polgar sisters is almost like a story made for a movie as well. Like three sisters who become like the dominant chess players in the world for women and for men too. They were great.
Oh yeah, great story. I mean, the thing is, like a screenwriter would have to try to figure out what angle to take and where to create conflict, because there's so many different options when you're dealing with like three people and the whole family. And yeah, but there's a lot of possibilities there because there's three daughters, and all of them became brilliant chess players, and particularly the youngest, Judith, who coincidentally has this fiery red hair, kind of similar to Beth Harmon in the Queen's Gambit. And she became one of the top 10 players in the world. So a really inspiring story in that before Judith, people questioned whether it was even possible for a woman to get that good.
I mean, their parents didn't play, right? Laszlo and I don't know their mom's name.
Clara.
Yes, they didn't play. And they just it was almost like an experiment where they wanted to see if they could just raise these kids from birth and see if they could become great chess players. And they did. And I think they pretty much just focused on tactics as well. But there's a question. I wonder if they were talented and didn't know it, or it was just all from Laszlo's training.
I think I think there must be stories of, people who tried that and it didn't work. So I think that they were also talented. Yeah.
I see.
So of course it's like a survivorship bias. Like we hear about the Polgars a lot because Laszlo was so successful because his methods combined with their kind of like innate ability. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think no matter what, like his methods seemed like they were very, very good. So probably anybody would become a great chess player, but would they become Judith Polgar? I mean, only one of them did, right? And a lot of stories have posited that like some of the hurdles based on sexism and some anti-Semitism were first like surmounted by Susan, who was the oldest. And that kind of paved the way, so it was a little easier for Judith, right? And that does make sense. And also, some of the pedagogical techniques were further refined because Susan was like, I think, 7 years older or 8 years older than Judith, so significantly older. Maybe 69, I think, for Susan, and I think it was 76 for Judith. Yeah.
What do you think improved in the training?
Probably just, which tournaments to play, what openings to study first, just little things, like little tweaks. One thing that I heard, which I always was fascinated by, especially now as I'm a mom of a 4-year-old, was that when they taught Susan, they tried to teach her at like 3 or 4. And the dad decided that was a waste of time with Judith, and he started more like 5. Though I heard that story, but I couldn't resist. I still started Bobby a little earlier. But I don't have any grand ambitions chess-wise. I mean, I have grand ambitions for him as a human, but I don't plan to train him to be like, a GM from 5. I just got so excited because like he saw chess pieces around the house that even at like 2, I was like introducing him to them.
And does he play?
He does. He likes a lot of the apps on the iPad, like Magnus's Kingdom, which is like a genius app, by the way. It's this app where it's like kind of like a merge of like Legend of Zelda and chess. So you have to like win all these battles, and your piece only moves through the world based on the chess movement. So if you're a knight, you have to like hop like a knight everywhere.
That is smart.
And so the kid has to really figure out like how the pieces move because there's all these obstacles.
So, and this is an app that Magnus is behind, or he lent his name to, or
Yeah, something like that. It's part of his, I think it's part of his like big, he's a big businessman now and he's got this huge like list of companies that he's a part owner in, the Magnus Group. And one of them is Play Magnus. And then there's Chess24, which is this chess site where a lot of the best tournaments in the world are hosted. And Chessable, which is like a training site. I'm not paid by them for anything. It just, there's a lot of great chess products out there. So
I didn't know Magnus was such a wheeler and dealer. So, okay, Magnus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Probably arguably the best world champion ever, but it's hard to say. I mean, Kasparov was world chess champion for 20 years before Magnus. And Magnus always seems such a introverted type of guy. You don't think of him as a big business guy.
Yeah, I think he's really just incredibly intelligent in so many ways, not just chess. He seems like he's got a good business sense. And I think a lot of having a good business sense, if you're that successful, is knowing who to trust, right? So, picking the right people to be on your team. And his dad, I think, has always been a major confidant and, part of his team. And obviously his dad's made some really good choices because it doesn't seem like Magnus has a lot of missteps when it comes to business. Seems like he's mostly done like a lot of good decisions so far.
Were you the announcer when Magnus was playing Kajarkin I don't know how to say his name, but in New York City?
I was not. They actually invited me. It would have been such an exciting opportunity because it was to work with Judith Polgar, but I was very, very pregnant. I think it was like the last month of my pregnancy, so I had to opt out of that one. But that was I visited though. I did visit. I remember it was pretty cool to have it in New York City.
Yeah, it was in the South Street Seaport, and I just remember. I guess it was Judith was astonished when she saw the last move of the match was Magnus's Queen G6 sacrificing the queen.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, it was an amazing move. But so what did you think of the Queen's Gambit?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was great. It was beautifully done. It showed chess in a way. I think I really loved it particularly because I've always been interested in kind of like the creative and artistic elements of chess and the crossovers creatively and story. And so it just showed things that I think had never been shown before. And I liked how they just avoided a lot of the cliches that you normally see in chess films and chess TV, where so many of the, series show like the pieces as a symbol for the player. They avoided that. And they showed for Beth how like chess was this way for her to like see the world, to kind of like find herself, to kind of merge her extraordinarily outer beauty in the series with the inner beauty of thought, like, perfect thought, which to me was quite interesting because I read the book recently because I organized this Mad Women's Book Club for U.S. chess women. And our first book was The Queen's Gambit. And I read the book, and in the book, Beth is supposed to be homely, which is a word I don't think people use very much now. I don't know why but apparently it means like unattractive. So she was unattractive in the book. When she played chess in the book, though, she glowed. So she kind of like it was like an elixir of beauty for her in the book. I thought that must be like a challenge to kind of like have that conceit in the book and translate it to the screen, because now you have Anya Taylor-Joy, who is obviously like incredibly stunning. Like, how can you make her more beautiful? But they did it. They did it when they showed that kind of like climactic scene where she kind of like merges her like brain and her body. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I thought the show was pretty accurate to the book, like beat by beat, which is not a common thing. Walter Tevis, who wrote the book, he also wrote The Hustler and The Color of Money. So he's very good at these like competitive subcultures and bringing it out. And he was also a chess player. He was a Class C rated chess player.
Yeah, and the dialogue was just like, some of it was just lifted from the book. What surprised me was how badly they all played. The Carol Khan, all pawns and no hope. Like, just some of their best lines were just lifted straight out of the book. I loved it.
Yeah, and it did sort of seem very similar to I wasn't alive, but the U.S. chess culture in the 1950s, early 1960s, it felt like what I read about that, U.S. chess history. Like, the grandmasters were good players, but they weren't really at the highest level at that time in the world.
Yeah, yeah, they did a really good job of conveying that. And then the Soviet chess school and the warmth of the Soviets, which, Gary Kasparov being a consultant on it, gave a lot of advice on like how to portray them, and obviously also the chess moves themselves, along with Bruce Pandolfini. So yeah, they did a really good job with it. One thing that I think a lot of other people have pointed out, so I have like a lot of respect for some of the people who pointed this out, and I do agree in some ways. Judith Polgar was one of them, that the show underestimated the sexism that she would actually experience. And yeah, I think it's kind of funny from like a mathematical perspective also. It's like everybody she meets in the series is good. There's only one exception. There's like one bad person. That's like the adoptive dad, right? Everybody else is like a good egg. And like, what a wonderful world that would be if it's like 9.5 out of 10 people you meet are just going to be like wonderful and generous and kind to you.
Well, I guess I don't know what you call it, the headmaster or the head mother of the foster home or adoptive orphanage, she wasn't so nice.
I have a different view on her actually. For any, this is very early. I guess people who are watching this probably don't wonder about spoilers, but I thought that her concerns about Beth being alone with a janitor in the basement were completely.
Yeah, I guess that's reasonable, and when you put it that way.
Yeah, and then it kind of tied in because when Beth was allowed to go on that class trip to a high school, the headmaster was like, "Okay, but you need another woman to come with you, right?" Because she was like worried about Beth's safety. That was like the subtext to me, which is of course more important than anything else, right?
Yeah, and then I guess Jolene, they became best friends, but when they were both young, there was some tension. I mean, she stole her book, stole the modern chess openings book.
Yeah, I like that though. I thought that was a good way of like giving Jolene a little bit of her own character.
Yeah.
That, she also had like hopes and desires, and she wasn't just like a trope for the series, which I think unfortunately Jolene was one of the weak points of the writing for me in both the book and in the series. Like it just seemed like it was a bit like tacked on. Like the acting was brilliant, but like she was just this like Black character that was tacked on to help Beth whenever she needed her. And like I would have liked to see even more development of like the person who stole the modern chess openings, There was more to explore there.
I mean, this is like the #1 show ever on Netflix in terms of their original scripted series. What do you think captured the public imagination so much? It's not like chess has been a great theme in TV or movies recently or ever.
The glamour, the introspection at a time when we need it the most. The idea of just losing yourself. Oh, and one big thing, because Netflix international, and it's been an international hit, is the lack of dialogue. I mean, the dialogue that's there is awesome, but there's actually not that much of it. There's a lot of just complete silence as chess moves are played, or even like, just beautifully edited scenes with like, a lot of music and fashion and cinematography that doesn't have much words. And I think, as somebody who sometimes watches things in other languages, and doesn't, listen to the dub versions always, like it's actually kind of nice to watch things that have some words, but not too many. Because then, maybe I have a hope of kind of like understanding it, and I can kind of relax a little bit and not be reading like constantly. So I wonder if that had something to do with it. And I think so.
I wonder also just, it feels accessible. Like if you're watching a show about some world-class athlete, that might not be as accessible, whereas chess feels like anybody could do it. Just like poker, just like Rounders with poker, I feel this did for chess what Rounders did for poker.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just so huge that I think it could even potentially do more. But you won't know for a while because, it'll take some time for people to find out. Like, 62 million people watched it apparently, or households, which probably means 100 million. And so of that 100 million, like some are just going to have, chess is cooler than I thought it was. It's beautiful. But never think of it again. But there's going to be a sliver of that, 100 million that will become obsessed with chess because of this series and never look back. And I think in 5-10 years, one of those people will win a tournament and they'll say, yeah, this is what it traces back to.
And when you were first starting out, did you experience a lot of, I mean, this is sort of a cliche question, but did you experience a lot of sexism and a lot of people upset at themselves when they lost to this little girl?
Less than most people because of my strong support network. I did sometimes have, I think more than people upset that they lost to me because, rating is such an indicative of your chess strength that like, I don't think people would be upset to lose to a 2,200 girl. They might be upset to lose to a 1,400 girl who's on her way up. Like there
Right.
were like people who seemed to be more upset at that point. But once I got good, people just seemed, quite excited and, mostly rooting for me. But the one thing that I think every girl who plays chess, the sexualization and the harassment, it's kind of impossible to totally avoid. So depending on, I think, the personality type, there's some women and girls who are really good at just like shutting that stuff out, or they have a really strong support network. So they just keep going. But there's some women and girls who don't have that support network or just are more sensitive. And like that can just shut them down. Somebody who just makes them uncomfortable, puts them in some uncomfortable situation, asks them to analyze chess, but really just wants to ask them on a date. For some people, that's just like whatever. And for some people, it's like, okay, like, not so sure about this game. And that's why I think that it would have been interesting to see Beth deal with a little bit more of conflict in that area because I would have liked to see how that character dealt with it.
Yeah, I guess she didn't really deal with it at all, other than people resenting losing to her. She didn't deal with anybody harassing her.
Yeah, a lot of people were interested in her, but if she wasn't interested in them, they were just seemed to be like, okay, there weren't people like chasing her down when she like wasn't interested. Which I think a lot of girls and women in the chess world probably get more of that than they should because there's such a skewed ratio, and also because people just need to be trained better and more respectful. That it can make a woman uncomfortable to relentlessly hit on her if she's already shown that she's not interested. Even if she's just in an arena where it's more of a professional and competitive arena, not one where she's looking for a date. And we had plenty of parties and stuff in chess tournaments, so I'm not like saying like I'm some like stodgy person who's like, yeah, a guy can never ask a chess girl out. But there are a lot of girls who like basically get asked out like when they're like walking to the board about to play a game. And like, that's like, you can wait for a better time, because if that woman is interested in that, she'll also go to the parties and the bars afterwards and you'll have an opportunity that's more appropriate, And if she's not interested and she just goes to her room to study chess afterwards, then hey, that's what she's here for. And she's not interested in like anything else right now.
Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main, that's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional, and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and or cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Maine, Mizzen and Maine.com. You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply. You were playing, you were winning the U.S. Women's Championship, you were writing books, and then you switched to poker. What made you kind of not go for more in chess? Do you feel like you could have gone for more?
Yeah, I could have gotten, I had 2 international master norms, so I definitely could have gotten like the international master title, I think. Why did I do other stuff? Just because I was more interested in new things. I felt like I kind of overperformed in terms of getting my 2 U.S. Women's Championships kind of early in life. And to me, that was like great because now I can like take those, use those for my, business and also engage in other intellectual activities rather than just like kind of trying to like narrow down and get a little bit better at chess, because at some point you have to work really, really hard to just get a little bit better. And I was like, well, if I start playing poker, there's this whole world I can meet and I can learn about a totally new thing. And I think I got lucky in that respect. But, I did miss some of the things about the chess world, like the travel and the flow experience of playing like a really important classical chess game. But I didn't miss, spending most of my time thinking about one very narrow subject.
Well, the great thing about chess also is it's a somewhat small subculture. So let's say you're traveling for an international women's tournament, you're going to run into the same people. You're probably going to be friends with them over the decades.
Yeah.
It's neat, the subcultural aspect. And poker is so big, there's a little bit of that effect, but probably not the same effect.
Yeah, but the thing is, even if I've always stayed in the chess world as like, a promoter and as a writer and a content creator, now a commentator. So I feel like I kind of get that like community of chess in my work, in my life, without like, also like training all the time, thinking super, super hard about chess. But I respect people who do. I think it's like, for me, like thinking about it really, really hard for 10 years was enough. But some people just keep doing that. And I think that really works for some people because it's just this like rock for them and they can do other things in their life around it as they figure out a way to like support themselves. So I do appreciate the people who just keep doing chess. But for me, I think it was good to kind of move on for my brain. Yeah.
I think also like maybe, do you think getting older, I mean, right now chess masters are getting younger and younger and younger. Some 9-year-old kid just became a chess master, which is like an incredibly hard level to get to for most people. And now there's 9-year-olds getting it. I feel like at a certain age, people just top out naturally. Like you can't, is it something about being young, the memory is better, or maybe the tactical vision is better? I don't know.
Well, I think the peak age is like late 20s or early 30s. So, you don't peak that young, but I think that like compared to other sports and like still there's lots of amazing players who are almost at the top of their game from, all the way through the 30s into the 40s, like, Vishniana or Kramnik, Veselin, Topalov stayed up there for ages. So yeah, I think that you can keep playing, but the world is structured where there's a lot of programs and activities for very young people. And so it's kind of natural that as people go through the different ages, they, slip in and out of chess because there's just so many great tournaments for kids and then for teens and then even for college students. And then after that, there's like a big break until they have like big seniors events. That said, I think that it's important to kind of engage grown-ups because it's like a community. And right now, especially, you are seeing that people are experiencing a lot of loneliness during the pandemic, and like creating communities around activities like chess, I think is an elixir for that.
Yeah. And like, some of the names you mentioned, like Kramnik or Topalov or
Anand, yeah.
Yeah, they, what happens to them? They reach world champion status. And then, the young crew like Magnus Carlsen and all the young kids now competing for the world championship come through. What happens to these grandmasters who are in the top 10, top 20? How do they make a living afterwards?
Well, those guys are all so successful. I don't think they have to worry about it. I mean, especially because they've made so much money over the years. And then they're so like, I think those elite players are usually doing quite fine. And anything they consult on or write about or coach is always going to be charged at a very premium rate because they used to be a world champion. Yeah, sponsorships. Vladimir Kramnik just did some work for Google DeepMind with the AlphaZero project. I mean, like chess, it's like it's more secretive than some sports. Like we don't really know how much money people have, but we can be pretty sure that anybody who's been world champion before right now, especially with chess, being so popular, is doing really, really well. It's more the mid-tier people that struggle a lot, especially when they get too old to play, if that's their main bread and butter. Like people who are, more in the 2,600 range or 2,500 range, not the 2,800 plus.
Okay, let's take a guy like in the U.S., Joel Benjamin, someone like that, who's U.S. champion, is big in the 80s, maybe early 90s. What happens to a player like that?
Well, he still just won a tournament, the U.S. Senior Championship Invitational. And I think he's written a lot of books, which are, widely acclaimed. The American Grandmaster, Liquidation in Chess. And then he also plays here and there. And then he coaches. And because he lives in like the New York area, that can be very lucrative for a former U.S. champion. I mean, there's a lot of parents out there who are like excited to learn from someone like that. And I believe he teaches at, a couple of places, including Columbia Grammar, I think, but I could be wrong about that. But I know he is a very well-respected coach. So I think it's easier for people like that. Like Joel Benjamin is, I think, done very well for himself.
And what do you do for your different streams of income? Like you're very good at like finding like a whole bunch of different streams of income. Like you're not relying on any one thing.
Yeah, well, you've definitely taught me that as well. Because I have like my labor of love at the U.S. Chess Federation with like the women's program and, bringing chess to girls and women. So that's something I do. It doesn't pay all of my bills, but it's exactly what I want to be doing. So it's nice that I'm making money at it at all. And then I am also an ambassador for Poker Stars. So that's, helpful as I play in poker games. Not only can I make money from the game itself, but I make some money from, speaking about the company and like doing interviews and, creating content for them. So that's another one. And then I also have commentary for the St. Louis Chess Club. So we do commentary for major events. And then just like speaking gigs and things like that. I love speaking to different groups of people, especially now that I can do it on Zoom. It's so fun.
Yeah. And I bet you like demand is up now because of the Queen's Gambit.
It is. It's really up. It's up. And I love to see it. I enjoy doing that a lot. Talking about, whether it's talking about how you can learn from the first episode of the Queen's Gambit, how to be a basic player, to go from like knowing the rules to knowing some checkmates, or just talking about negotiating in poker and how some of the things in poker can teach you how to be a better negotiator. I like speaking to people. So that's always fun. And then of course, writing. I've done less of that ever since I've gotten into like kind of like commentary and podcasting. But in some ways, besides chess, it's like my biggest love. So,
I have an idea for you based on you did this series of podcasts where you were asking people their favorite hand.
Yes.
You should do a book, My Favorite Hand, and just compile all the transcripts, edited, but compile all the transcripts of all the people you interviewed.
Yeah, I think we want to do that, kind of similar to like Tools of the Titans by Tim Ferriss, where we take out like all the best parts of the interviews and like, compile it into a book. Yeah. That's a good benefit from podcasting, that even though I think from a financial point of view, to me at least, I mean, it hasn't really offered a lot of, opportunities, but it's really great networking tool. It's also really great for your sponsors because they love to see you getting out there and talking to cool people. And then it's great for creating content that you can later repurpose, right? I'm sure you've gotten a lot of writing ideas from your pods.
Oh yeah. And I think so many podcasters are missing out on the opportunity to just turn so many episodes into complete books. They're just not doing it.
Yeah. Okay. I got to get on that. And my friend Ben Johnson too, who you mentioned earlier, the Perpetual podcast.
Yeah.
He definitely needs to do that.
Yeah. He's got great interviews. Like he's got a great chess podcast. Now, a lot of people in the past few weeks, obviously, have been coming up to me and saying, well, how do I learn chess as quickly as possible? What do you say to people? What's the recommendation?
I think they should go to one of the sites, or it depends whether they like learning on their computer or their phone. I'm sorry, man. It's like, forget about like the chess set. It's like, you got two choices, your iPad or your phone or your desktop. And if you go on your desktop and you go to like Lead Chess or chess.com, they've got like great tutorials. And then if you go on your iPad or your iPhone, you download like Play Magnus or Chess Kid. That's the other thing I'd warn people about. If you're a grown-up and you want to learn chess, don't be afraid of kids' books or kids' tools. You know, just because it's like a talking, laughing pawn doesn't mean that you can't use it too.
Yeah, and but it's interesting that you say go to the computer or the phone, because I feel like when I was a kid, chess books were beautiful. Like they were just designed beautiful, and like you said earlier, you like taking out the board and playing through the games. Now that just doesn't happen anymore. I feel like there are chess books in the bookstore, but it's people don't really get the books as much. They watch YouTube videos and then play games and right away, and it's not so much a book buying thing to learning chess.
Well, I think that's a mistake at some point, because when you're learning the rules, I think it's like a practical thing that it's good to use a computer or an iPad, because if you try to move your pawn somewhere where you can't move it, it'll tell you. So
Right.
it's just a very elegant system for you to learn chess, as opposed to like trying to learn it with one person on a board in pieces, especially in a pandemic when you can't easily hire a coach. But afterwards, like once you reach a certain level, one of the great delights of chess is how well it pairs with books, because of like the diagrams in a chess board, and how you can kind of combine pictures and words to have like this luxurious reading experience. I mean, some of the oldest bestsellers were about chess.
Well, what are your favorite older chess books?
Oh, I'm talking about the ones like written around the time of the Bible. I mean, the Gutenberg Bible. I'm talking about like that kind of stuff. But
Well, I like this classic. But it's my first chess book was Paul Morphy's Games of Chess, and I don't remember the author now, but I had a blue cover.
In terms of like old books, like maybe a copy of my dad's books, My 60 Memorable Games, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
I liked Dvoretsky's books when I was a kid. I like tactics books of any kind. I would always like devour those tactics books. My dad taught me about that. And Rousen's books. I liked endgame books. I was never very good at endgames, like endgame strategy. Because I wasn't good at them, I liked to like read books about them, and I felt like it was a good learning curve for me. And my friend Irina Krush, who, we talked about on my podcast Ladies Night, is she's a grandmaster and an 8-time US women's champion. And she tells me that when she does coaching with children, she often finds that people reach a plateau if they don't use books. Isn't that funny?
If they're just studying on the computer.
Yeah, probably because they're not slowing down enough. That would be my guess.
That's really
There's something
interesting.
about the book that forces your brain to slow down a couple notches.
I should probably take a break from the computer and just look at books for a couple months.
Yeah, or just a couple hours a day.
Yeah. I'm going to devote my life to it now. Now that I've watched the Queen's Gambit, I'm going to become a professional chess player. That's all I'm going to do. I wonder if anybody's making that decision. Like you said earlier, maybe some kids are right now. They watch that and they figure, oh, if it was her, it could be me too.
Yeah. The thing is, how many parents are letting their kids watch that? Because I teach a group of girls with my US Chess Women program, and we had Gary Kasparov come in to talk about the series, and we showed a couple, PG excerpts, obviously. They were the chess parts. And when I talked to the girls about whether their parents had let them see it, one of them said something hilarious. She was like, no, my parents don't let me see it. They watch it by themselves when I'm in my room doing homework. But then every time there's a chess part, they're like, come in, you can watch.
Oh my God.
So it's like the inverse, right? Of like what normally.
I feel bad. I let my daughters watch True Blood on HBO when they were little kids. So what other, when I was a kid, I read The Queen's Gambit. It was written in the early 80s, again, by Walter Tevis. What other chess books, fiction, anything that you've been reading?
I really liked a couple of books, actually. They came out last year, which was horrible timing, but bad coincidence, I guess. One was called The Moves That Matter by Jonathan Rowson. It was kind of like this, he's a philosopher and a grandmaster.
Oh, yeah.
So
I got that book, yeah.
I like that a lot, especially it's a kind of book that you just read parts of from time to time, similar to like the Tools of the Titans. Like you don't read it in one sitting, you kind of like pick through it. And then there was another guy who wrote a book called All the Wrong Moves. That was a quick read.
That sounds familiar.
It was a memoir about a writer who decided to just like spend a whole year traveling the chess circuit and playing chess. And he traveled all over the world doing this. And he wasn't a great player.
Did he travel with a guy who was like a master and they went to
St. Petersburg?
They went to the place where the chess city is?
Paisa, yeah, the Elista.
Yeah.
You're thinking of The Chess Artist, which is a lot older. That J.C. Hallman, though, he's a great writer too. But that book's really old, like 15 years old or something, I think, or 10 years old.
Oh, thanks for aging me there.
Oh no.
That's an ancient book. I feel like I read it yesterday.
Well, maybe it's had a resurgence because J.C. is also doing a lot of like mainstream writing. But it was a really beautiful book. It's just that the chess world has changed so much since then. Yeah. You know?
And what about fiction? You read the Defense by Vladimir Nabokov?
Yeah, I did. I don't remember loving it though. I know that I loved the, some of his other books, but I don't remember loving that one. I think that was one that he wrote in Russian, not English, right?
Oh, I don't know, actually.
Nonfiction, there's a lot. Like The Queen of Catway. That was a great movie.
Didn't your brother like tutor her a little?
Greg did, I think, online, and she came to Philly once, and I gave her a chess lesson, and she spoke to the girls in the Philly chess girls movement with ASAP. It was cool. She was great, but she was shy at the time. Now she's been in America for many years. She goes to a college. I think it's in Seattle area, Northwestern University or something.
Does she still play chess?
She does. Not a ton though. I think she's kind of more into like the college life and, just getting out there. But she's probably having a resurgence in her career after this Queen's Gambit, because it's actually a great movie, The Queen of Catway. It's a great movie. It didn't get enough attention. And, one of the only criticisms people are bringing against The Queen's Gambit is that there's not a ton of diversity in it, which people say that's reflective of the chess world in the 1960s, which it was set. But it wasn't kind of a fantasy series as was. So they could have maybe thrown in a little more diversity anyway. But, it kind of leads people naturally to some of these other movies like Queen of Catway and Brooklyn Castle, which show.
I don't know Brooklyn Castle.
What's that?
I don't know Brooklyn Castle.
Oh, you would love that. That's a great movie. It's a documentary about IS-318, which is this like multi-national championship team in Brooklyn. And it's about like how they became this chess powerhouse.
Were they masters?
Some of them were. Most of them were more of like the expert level, but they were like the first junior high school team to ever win the national high school championship. So they basically like won a higher weight class, which is amazing.
So what's next for you now in chess or poker or anything? What's the next big thing you're going to try out?
What is the next thing I'm going to try? Well, those books that you told me to write. That's such a great idea. I mean, that's what I've been missing, really, like writing. I just wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post the other day, and even that, like, it's just an article, but it just feels so good to like, force yourself to organize your thoughts on paper.
What was it about?
It was about myths in chess, like the 5 biggest myths of chess.
Can you tell us what they were?
Yeah, well, some of them are, going to be obvious after you've listened to this conversation or watched The Queen's Gambit. One of them was that chess is not sexy. And I talked about how in the medieval times, chess was seen as synonymous with sex. And there was even a book called The Book of Erotic Chess. And like, yeah, this is not a joke.
It's like the opposite of the chess tournaments I went to as a kid.
And, it was considered that like a chess game was like an allegory for like having sex because, you couldn't show 2 people having sex. Maybe that would be considered pornographic. So like, that's like a fascinating bit of chess history. And, when you see these like kind of like sexy scenes in chess movies or TV, it's like, hey, that goes back quite a long time. The other one was that I liked was that chess players see 20 moves ahead, because I think one of the most important life lessons from chess actually is that you need to consider all your options and like try to look for different options. Like, you have your theory of listing all the different things you can do, your idea list, like 10 ideas a day.
Yeah.
I love that because you're looking horizontally. You're like, what can I do now? What ideas are right there in front of me that I'm not considering? Whereas instead, sometimes people get tunnel vision and they're looking like 20 moves ahead in one plan. And that's just like we say in chess, long think, wrong think, right?
Yeah, and it reminds me, I never thought of it this way, but it reminds me of Alexander Kodov's book, Think Like a Grandmaster, where he says breath first. Like, look at all your choices first before you start going down any one, because some of the choices you could eliminate right away.
Exactly. And you're just going to miss something right in front of you. Because if you look 20 moves ahead, invariably there's going to be something on move 3 that you didn't see, and you just wasted all that time, which is very similar to the life axiom that man plans, God laughs.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what's another myth?
Another one I put, which was everybody's most favorite one, well, at least chess players, was that it's a myth that the king is the most important piece in chess. The pawn is the most important piece in chess because without pawns, the game is just like a mess. It's mushy. And the pawns have the most kind of like interesting piece movement in a way because they capture differently than they move. They kind of create the bones of the game where all the other pieces play, based on their structure. And I also found this very interesting because when AlphaZero, the artificial intelligence that was devised by Google a couple of years ago, recently, in an even more interesting experiment, this artificial intelligence was tasked to try different chess variants, right? So in some of them, stalemate was a win, not a draw. In some of them, you weren't allowed to castle. But most of them changed the movements of the pawn. Like they tried variants where AlphaZero would play itself for like a week, but the pawns, instead of moving only forwards, would also be allowed to move sideways or backwards.
Oh, I didn't know
or
this.
2 squares at a time. And so they tested all these variants. And the small changes to the pawn to me are so fascinating because it totally changes the game.
Have you read that book, Analyzing AlphaZero's Games? It's very interesting.
Yeah, I have. Game Changer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's a
Yeah,
great book.
And it was like AlphaZero was much more, it was like a human aggressive player. It was like an extremely aggressive player, which I thought was interesting, as opposed to Stockfish, which is you can't figure out Stockfish's moves.
Yeah, I found that fascinating. It's like it sounded like they were thinking more like a poker player. It's very like it was more probabilistic in a way than just brute force, kind of calculating a position based on like pawns. For listeners, like normally when you're talking about a chess position with a computer, you determine everything in pawns. So if I have a really good position, but we have the exact same pieces, the computer will tell me I'm up a pawn. But it's like, I'm not up a pawn. We have the same pieces. I just have this like great open file and my bishops are in better squares. So they're telling me I'm up like the equivalent of a pawn, right? Whereas AlphaZero communicated how it felt about positions totally differently. It started saying, well, I'm 80% to win this position, which I think is just like a way more human way to think about things, right?
I asked Gary Kasparov if he had read the book, and he's like, read the book. I wrote the foreword to the book. I missed that he wrote the foreword of that book, and I had just read it. But, well, anyway, so thanks so much for talking about the Queen's Gambit with me. I've been wanting to talk with you about this since the show came out.
Yeah, it's so fun.
We'll have to play sometime online, but I have to study a little bit more first. I want to catch up. I remember I was playing your brother Blitz once, and he was like, he made some comment to me that it's like I knew nothing about strategy at all, and I just had tactics or something like that. Like it was like playing someone who was a little kid, but who knew the tactics. So he had some kind of offhanded insult / compliment.
Sounds like a compliment. Yeah, you play like such a young person. That's definitely a compliment in chess, right?
I don't know. He beat me every game. Although I remember playing him in a tournament in 1997, and it was a B4 Kings Indian, and he crushed me. He's such a strong player. So
and particularly good at blitz. He's an absolute monster in blitz. So he must have really liked you if he was trash talking. I'll say that. It's one of those things like somebody's only going to trash talk you if they actually think you're awesome.
Well, what openings do you play?
I play E4 and the Sicilian.
Kind of like Beth Harmon, or she plays the Queen's Gambit for white, right? But she was playing the Sicilian in the beginning, at least.
Oh yeah, she did play the Sicilian though. She likes the Sicilian, but the Queen's Gambit is not. I've never played that. Although, after watching the series, I'm like, a lot of my girls who are going to be coming up through the program are going to want to play the Queen's Gambit. So I feel like I have to learn it a little more now.
I feel like with king pawn openings, you have to know too much opening theory, or you have to take a step back and play very conservative.
Like the London, yeah. Yeah, that's not very Beth Harmon-esque. She would not play the London, I don't think. It's like a system. She wants to go for something aggressive. The thing about the Queen's Gambit that people should understand, and Gary was actually talking about when he spoke to my girls' club room about his work on the series, is that it's like very specific, right? You push your pawn forward, they push yours, and then you sacrifice your pawn, right, with c4. And actually, there's so many ways that it could go besides that, like the game you played against my brother with the King's Indian, the Grunfeld. There's a lot of different ways it could go, but I think that it's definitely an opening that we're going to see a lot more of because of the series.
Yeah, it's probably true. Also, I think there's a rise of streamers now. You should do streaming on Twitch of chess. I bet you would get like a huge audience.
I did do some of that earlier in the pandemic. I enjoyed it, actually. I thought it was like, for me, it was like an addiction. I had to quit a little bit because I was just working. Like, I have a 4-year-old and I was doing all of my other work in the morning, and then I would just stream every night, and it's addictive. But the thing is, it really rewards the people who do it the most. You kind of have to like make it your main thing.
I'll say Greg, your brother has a great. I watch his YouTube videos. I don't know if he does it on Twitch. I'm sure he does, but I watch the YouTube videos. And Eric Rosen, I've been watching lately.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Very, very cool guy, Eric Rosen. Not my brother. Nah. We must clarify
He's
when
okay.
I said great guy, I meant Eric.
Right.
You got to play Mafia with us, though.
Yeah, no, definitely I want to. The only thing that stopped me actually is that lately I've gotten more addicted to playing chess online, but that'll settle down, I'm sure. But in any case, Jen Shahade, author of Chess Bitch and Play Like a Girl, both books I highly recommend. And thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
The McNugget Buddies are back. But this time, they got a fresh look as part of the new Kerwin Frost box at McDonald's. We're talking all new buddies, dressed head to toe in the freshest fits, all designed by the artist Kerwin Frost. So when you order the Kerwin Frost box with your choice of 10-piece McNuggets or a Big Mac, you'll get one of the flyest McNugget buddies to go with it. Think you can collect them all? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.